Good afternoon. Thank you for coming for this press briefing. The press briefing will be in English because we are streaming and we have some your journalist colleagues watching us from Brussels, from Europe. But of course, if you will need later on to ask some questions in Czech, we are absolutely available. I am available and my colleague will have interpretation as well, so you can ask even in Czech. But we will start the briefing in English. Thank you for coming for this press briefing of the delegation of members of the European Parliament from Renew Europe political group. We came here for SME Assembly, the biggest event focusing on small and medium-sized enterprises in Europe. Let me start, and then I will pass the word to my colleague Andrease Glücka. I am Martiny Dlabajové, and I am chair of the SME task force of the Renew Europe group. I have the honor to lead this delegation of members of the European Parliament here to Prague. We are Renew Europe, we are pro-European liberal group in the European Parliament, and we were the only political group present here in Prague, which shows our big interest in small and medium-sized enterprises. We were here delegation of 5 members of the European Parliament. Now with me there is Andrease Glücka, my colleague from Germany, who is vice chair of the Committee on COVID-19. And I just want to underline this because I think it's very important, because this committee, where I am member as well, Committee on COVID-19, is a committee which is dealing with the lessons learned from the pandemics. And of course, we know that SMEs were very hit by this COVID pandemic. So would we really go into the deep? What can we do to avoid any other situation like the pandemic was? So it's very interesting for us. And Andrease Glücka is as well member of the Renew Europe Task Force on SMEs on behalf of Committee on the Environment, Public Health and Food Safety, so-called Committee ENVI. Our political group worked for SMEs, for small, medium-sized enterprises, since the start of the mandate. This is our utmost priority, and you can imagine that as liberals, we are those who are defending the business, doing business. So this is our main priority. We have established this task force for SMEs that meets every month to update each other on our work in the different committees and raise alarms when necessary. So when there is on the table some legislation, we should know across the committees horizontally what is going on and where will be the concrete impact on SMEs. As you probably know, SMEs represent 99% of all businesses in the European Union. They employ around 100 million people, account for more than half of Europe's GDP, and play a key role in adding value in every sector of the economy. The small and medium-sized enterprises were hit hard during pandemic, and now they are going through another crisis, caused, of course, by high energy prices and high inflation. One interesting information is that business confidence for next year is even lower than during the financial crisis 2008-2009 and the height of the COVID pandemic. So they are even more afraid of what will happen, of course, next year. So Renew Europe Task Force calls for concrete actions to help SMEs to get out of the multiple crises and to ensure a stable regulatory environment for them. And we all know that for businesses, the word stable is maybe the most important for doing business. We, as members of the European Parliament, we were here in Prague to listen to entrepreneurs, to association of businesses, to chambers of commerce, to all stakeholders, and to tell the European Commission, the only institution which can propose new legislation, to tell them a couple of things, to tell them what they should do for the businesses. So we are kind of guards of SMEs in relation to European Commission. What we really need, and then I will conclude, but I wanted to mention a couple of things. We really need a constant application of think small first principle, which is something which needs to be done by European level, but as well by national level. We need systematic and proportionate application of the SME test, which means we as a parliament don't want any legislation from the European Commission without a successful SME test. So without knowing impact on small and medium-sized enterprises. We need simplification because we know that administrative burden remains a major issue for small and medium-sized enterprises. Just for your, to give you some interesting figure, on average, every big company spends €1 per employee to comply with the regulatory duty. Medium-sized enterprise spends €4, and small business even €10. So there is a huge difference. So the simplification needs to be done. What we are promoting as well is one in, one out principle, which means when you come up with one legislation, you need to kick out one other legislation. We would personally love to see one in, two out. That would be great. And of course, and this is my last point, what we really want to do, we want to work on issues for small and medium-sized enterprises horizontally. So not working in silos, because this is a kind of problem for every institution. And you can imagine that this is a problem at national level sometimes as well, working in silos. We call it in Czech resortismus, but these silos work. So we need to be horizontal to help small and medium-sized enterprises. Okay, there would be many other things, but this is what we were trying to express to European Commission in these SME Assembly days. And I will pass the word to my colleague Andrease Glücka.
Thank you, Martina. Dobrý den. I'm afraid this is the only Czech word I can speak, so I have to continue in English. I hope you understand English. Otherwise, thank you very much that we have interpretation today. So first of all, I would like to say that it's a pleasure, and I believe that it's an honor that I can be part of the delegation of the SME Task Force on the SME Assembly here in Prague. And let me tell you, the location was perfect. Of course, the work was in the focus, but you know, I really fell in love with your city, Prague. So this is really good. But it's not only that the location was perfect because I love your city. I believe the location is perfect in the Czech Republic because also you in Czech Republic have a huge variety of small and medium-sized enterprises, very similar to the region I come from in southern Germany. So I believe that a lot of our interests are actually the same. Renew Europe, our political group, has the best working SME task force, the best functioning SME task force. And I really want to mention Martiny Dlabajové, which is our chairwoman for the SME task force and which is doing a wonderful job. Martina was already mentioning this horizontal approach. Very often in legislation, there is one committee going for legislation. There is one DG in the Commission going for legislation, and sometimes the one hand doesn't know what the other hand does. And this is exactly this new approach we promote, that we need a horizontal approach, that we go for a fair legislation. We had, when we talk about SMEs, we're talking about a major stakeholder, for example, for vocational training. It is good for young people. Vocational training is like one of the things the SMEs are really strong on. And also, SMEs is a guarantee for jobs. And there will be no successful technological transition without functioning SMEs, small and medium-sized entrepreneurs. So when it comes to legislation, of course, it is not possible if we go for certain laws on the European level that we make laws for big companies and we make extra laws for small and medium-sized companies. But on the other hand, we have to see that the impact of the same law is very much different in a bigger company with a legal department, for example, and for smaller companies, smaller enterprises, where maybe it's like only one or two people dealing with bureaucracy. And it's not only European bureaucracy, it's also bureaucracy of the member states. So the impact of new legislation on a small company is a lot bigger, and this is the reason why we need this SME test. And this is the reason why we promote one in, one out. And I really have to admit, I want to underline what you said before. Actually, we don't only want to stop to make things worse. We want to make things better. And so we need one in, two out. This is my personal goal. I had very, very many interesting meetings during the last 3 days. This was very, very intense. I want to say that I really appreciated also the expo we had at the SME Assembly, because a lot of Czech companies, very often small companies, SMEs, have been there and they showed their latest innovations. So there is a new generation of fire extinguishers. Or I was very much impressed by a flight training simulator which has been there. Or I was very, very impressed by the research which has been done on hydrogen technology, for example, or on energy storage. This is the major problems, and we have such a huge knowledge in our small and medium-sized enterprises. Also vertical farming, for example. We had one at the expo showing us their approach to vertical farming. So after all, this was very intense 3 days. I really learned a lot. And you know, ladies and gentlemen, politics is not only about talking, it is also about listening. I was listening for the last 3 days. Now I was talking a bit, and now I am happy to listen to you in case you have any questions. Thank you very much.
It's up to you, the questions. Can I?
Hello, my name is Emma Slezhenska from UCP Prague. The year 2023 will not be easy for small and medium-sized enterprises. I would like to ask, what should the enterprises be worried about the most?
You want to start?
I'd love to.
You can start.
There is a whole bunch of challenges our small and medium-sized enterprises have to face. But I believe that the two words which were mentioned the most was energy and resources, raw material. This is a huge challenge. And we have to understand as European Union that we have to work together a lot stronger in certain fields. So, for example, when it comes to the diversification of supply chains and to make sure that our companies have access to raw materials and, of course, as well, energy. And in this regard, the European Union is a huge advantage because we are the largest single market in the world. So if we make sure that we get supply chains and that we have like different supply chains, then I believe we are doing a lot better job when we have an approach which is European, because every member state of the European Union, including Germany, every member state of the European Union is too small on its own to deal with such problems. Because of that, we have to work together, we want to work together, and I am convinced it is to the advantage of every member state.
I just add one thing. What will be very crucial for 2023 is how to find a balance between the short-term measures and long-term measures. Short-term measures, exactly, the main problems are energy costs and accessibility of raw materials and accessibility of energy. But long-term measures are, of course, as I mentioned before, simplification, less administrative burden, predictability and stability of environment. And for me, what was interesting in these 3 days, everybody was looking for this kind of balance. That we talk maybe about the current crises, but we cannot forget the daily business, which means stable environment. So to look for the balance between these two will be the major challenge. Other questions?
Good afternoon. I'm Aneta Zachová from Euractiv. I have a question. Nowadays, it is very important for companies to implement digital technologies, also to implement green technologies and so on. But I can imagine that for small and medium enterprises, it is very difficult to find capacities to, implement new technologies and so on. So my question is, how actually the European Union, European tools can help small and medium companies to implement these kind of like new technologies? How we can, for example, tackle some kind of barriers that are connected with capacities of SMEs. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this question. In fact, this is a big challenge for SMEs, even more in these days when they are struggling with the crises and with the problems they have right now. But there are a lot of instruments. It's just a question to find the right mix. If I look at the digital side, we just voted last week on a digital decade program, Path to Digital Decade, where I was reporter for the European Parliament, and we made sure that SMEs are taken in account and that there are concrete instruments for them, like digital innovation hubs in the regions, which will assist the small and medium-sized enterprises, that there are clear targets for SMEs before 2030, to achieve the digitalization. There are different financing instruments like Digital Europe, for example. There is a Horizon Europe, a big program for research and innovation where the SMEs can apply for innovative digital solution. On the side of sustainability, it's interesting because this question was asked many times in these 3 days. And one of the concrete measures that Commission is preparing, and we are supporting Commission as Parliament, is to create a network of advisors for sustainability for small and medium-sized enterprises. So this is something that will happen soon. And once again, in Horizon Europe, there are some programs, some budgets for sustainability as well. Where is the innovation part? So these instruments are there. Of course, you can ask how SMEs will know, but this is up all to us to let them know.
I would like to underline what Martina said. We have to make sure that our SMEs have access to all those programs we have. This is our job. This is what we are fighting for every single day. And I believe there is another thing we can do to support SMEs. You just mentioned the challenge of this green transition. And let me tell you, I'm very eager about the Green Deal. I really believe that it's a huge advantage if Europe is the first climate neutral continent in 2050. And so I really like the goal. But there is different approaches, different ways of how you can reach this goal. So, for example, there are forces in the European Union, also in the Parliament, that they want to go. They have like some law and order approach. They have their favorite technology children, and they have their step technology children. The one they like, the one they push. They pour money over it, and the other ones, they basically want to prohibit. I believe this is the wrong approach. I believe what we need is, as politicians, we should concentrate to go for a good framework. And we have very good tools there. So, for example, the CO2 emissions, when it comes to the ETS, the European Trading System for CO2, because there, politics is only going for a framework. That we say, in certain sectors, mobility, for example, we expect this sector to reduce CO2 emissions. But we do not want to tell them how they're going to reach this. So what we need is, and what we are seeking for, is technological neutrality, because technological neutrality allows the best approach, not only in terms of CO2 reduction, but it makes it possible to get the best and cheapest solution. And because we have a whole bunch of variety of small and medium-sized enterprises, I am convinced that this technological neutral approach is a very, very good thing for SMEs. So I believe that when, especially in this environmental committee where I'm working at, especially here, I'm really fighting for technological neutrality to ensure that small and medium-sized companies, they have a high innovative potential, that they find the best and cheapest solution. And now, last point, you know, if we only find very expensive solutions for the green transition, then we can do this in Europe. But this will not help the climate, and we will lose jobs. The only possibility is we have to find good solutions, which are at the same time cheap solutions. Because then we have those technologies we can export to third countries. This is good for the climate. Only like this we can save the climate. And this is good for our value chain. It is good for our European jobs. And so this approach, technological neutrality, I believe is very, very important, especially for small and medium-sized enterprises.
Other questions? Euractiv has another one.
Yes, thank you. I have another question. I know that SME Assembly, for example, is an example of platform how to have a dialogue actually with SMEs. And I was wondering if there is any systematic way for the European Parliament or for the EU institutions as a whole how to gather actually concerns or initiatives from SMEs. Is there any structural dialogue, or how to call it, how to, you know, communicate with SMEs to be able to literally address their concerns? Thank you.
Thank you for this question. There are several ways how to do it, and I will maybe try as a politician even to judge which are working, which are not, because that's interesting. We already mentioned this SME test. This is something which is really one instrument that the European Parliament is pushing a lot, because of course we don't want to receive legislative proposal on our table from the Commission and not knowing anything what is behind and what is the real impact on SMEs. So we are asking always Commission to go through SME test to look what will be the concrete impact of concrete measures of that legislation. And what we push for is to have it mandatory on every legislation. Because sometimes you have legislative proposals that don't look at the first sight as a proposal which could impact SMEs, but in the end, in the middle, you find that they will impact SMEs. They will impact businesses. So this SME test is a very important instrument. We had a lot of discussion about this with the European Commission. And the European Commission is ready to strengthen this instrument. And we are calling as Renew Europe for the Commission not to come up with any new proposal without this SME test. How Commission does the SME test is another way of network, let's say, because there is enterprise network, which is a network managed directly by the European Commission. So Commission is looking at this impact through the network. And then if I look at we are here in Czech Republic, if I look at the Czech environment, of course the enterprise network is within chambers of commerce, within association of small and medium-sized enterprises. So at the end you have really a mix of these different businesses and different associations. And then one last instrument I would like to mention is stakeholders at the European level, which are very active, and of course they are aware of everything what is happening in the European institutions. And all these main stakeholders were present in SME Assembly, and they are always representing one part of business sector. And you know it again from Czech Republic. There is a Chamber of Commerce, at European level is Eurochambers. There is Svaz průmyslu, and they are taking care of SMEs as well. So they are part of Business Europe at European level. And then there is an association of small and medium-sized enterprises, and their correspective at the European level is SME United. And what is important for us as politicians, that we have constant dialogue with these stakeholders. This is why we spend 3 days with them to listen what is really happening and what are their worries. And I must admit, I don't have any problem to admit it, that sometimes stakeholders are aware before us that Commission is working on something which will impact small and medium-sized businesses. So for us, this dialogue is crucial. Without dialogue with stakeholders, we would even not know all impact which is there on the market. So these are all the instruments.
Is everything right, she said? We have tools. Maybe sometimes they're not good enough. We need other tools. You explained that. And the other thing is, who is responsible for making proposals which are coming from the Commission? Who is responsible for making this more down to earth, more pragmatic? And you have people in the European Union which you have direct access to. It is the elected MEPs. So this is our daily work, that we get a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails, a lot of personal speeches as well, that sometimes even smaller companies, oh no, not sometimes, often, it's my daily work, that they get in contact with me and that they tell me, please, in Parliament, change this proposal which is coming from the Commission, which might be maybe not good for our companies, for our sector. Please change it. This is our everyday work, and this is tough. This is tough because we have, politics is the art to balance different interests. Our job is, as Renew Europe, to be a spokesperson for especially SMEs, because we believe that SMEs is the best guarantee for safe jobs in the European Union. And very often this job is not so easy, because we have to go for all those discussions with other member states, with other parties, with other groups in the European Parliament. And in this regard, I want to mention here that it is the Czech delegation, which is like one of my strongest allies in this fight for technological neutrality, as I mentioned before, but of course, also when it comes to making proposals coming from the Commission, making them better, and negotiating them in the trialogues together with the Council, so that at the end of the day, we have a very pragmatic legislation coming from the European Union. It's not always so easy, but if it was easy, they wouldn't need us. Huh? So it's a job which is very interesting, and this is what we do. This is our daily work.
Yeah, there is a question.
Thank you. I have one more question prepared. The European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has promised an SME relief package, but has not yet specified what will it contain. Is there any progress in this regard, and what do you think should be in this package?
This is an excellent question. SME relief package. Balíček pomoci malým a středním podnikům. Yeah, you are right. Ursula von der Leyen mentioned this in her speech, in a State of the Union speech in September. And let me give you some emotions as well, some impressions. We were very happy that we hear something about SMEs in the State of the Union speech, because that means if you are pronouncing something as President of the European Commission, it means that you are caring about SME. So for us, it was a very nice moment. Everybody is still curious what will be inside this package, and I must say that we had a lot of questions on this in these 3 days from SMEs and from stakeholders, and we know that the Commission is still working on that, And we are very happy that they are consulting us as well, so we can find a way together. On one side, members of the European Parliament, on the other side, stakeholders. And we are looking, and I think this SME Assembly was very crucial for that, because even the Commission was hearing all these questions and maybe even some ideas what should be inside and what are the main things. I will put it in this really concrete and simple way. A big surprise, and I had a very nice talk only 1 hour ago after the policy conclusions of the SME Assembly with the person responsible for this in the Commission, who told me, well, everybody is waiting that there are some money. Because when you hear package, relief package, you think, okay, it's money, it's funding, it's some program, there is money for us. It's not only about the money. How I imagine SME relief package, there must be the real relief, and it's not only about money. But what for sure Commission is considering is to look better at late payment problem, late payment directive. And this directive is there. We know that despite legislation which is already there, less than 40% of payments in the EU are made within the contractual deadline, less than 400%. So you can imagine what does it mean for an SME waiting out of the deadline for the payments. And what we are saying as liberals, we are saying it should not be only B2B between businesses, but we have to be careful at late payments from the state and from the public administration to the SMEs as well. Because sometimes we know that public administration is the worst payer of invoices. So we need to push on this as well. So that will for sure will be there. And I think it's very good that we are talking about it, because 1 out of 4 bankruptcies in Europe are due the invoices not paid in time. 1 out of 4. So which means late payment must be absolutely tackled. Then another thing, of course, we need this very fast, quick access to finance to ensure cash flow for SMEs. So this is something that should be there. And I'm not saying that it will be like a fund available, but at least simplification of access to finance for SMEs. And what I expect as well, because a lot of stakeholders and SMEs were calling for that in these days, next year, 2023, is European Year of Skills. And a lot of SMEs are calling for more skilled people, more skilled workforce. So I am sure that Commission will do something on this side as well. And we will be pushing the Commission to come up with concrete content of relief package as soon as possible. Because we think that in situation today, already today is late.
As you said, we don't have the proposal yet. But if you would ask me for my wish list, it would be about 2 meters long. So I have a lot of wishes where I believe it is important that those points are included. A lot of those points you already mentioned, SME test, 1 in, 2 out, we were talking about that before. Also when it comes to training, vocational training, training for people, I believe we have to find solutions, very pragmatical solutions, also for our SMEs, because they can be a really good tool to train people. When it comes to financing, for example, very often we have huge programs like, for example, Horizon Europe, which is good, which is perfect, but sometimes, especially regarding SMEs, we're doing a perfect job until 98%, but like the last 2%, we really struggle there, like that companies really can take the advantage, and very often it's a problem of financing. If they have a good product, if they have a good innovation, for example, Horizon Europe is really supporting them very, very well. And we have to make sure that it also works for the last 2% of the work. Then I believe knowledge transfer is like one of the major keys. So all the knowledge we gain at our universities, for example, we have to make sure that this knowledge can go a lot faster into our companies, into our SMEs. So the United States, for example, is a lot better in that. Yeah? They have a very, very good and fast knowledge transfer. We have to become better when it comes to this point. And then what I would really love to see, now this is a specific issue. I'm a medical doctor. I'm a general surgeon. And so in my committee, in the ENVI committee, there is this medical device regulation. Medical devices need to be approved to come on the market. And there was this new system already in the last term. It was decided on. And this means a lot of bureaucracy and red tape for companies, especially because if you need an approval for a medical device, you need to go to a so-called notified body. And we don't have enough notified bodies. So the access from a bigger company to get a spot at the notified body, they're having an easier job. It's still difficult for them, but the smaller companies, which are producing medical devices, for example, they are really in a struggle. And this means that if we don't do anything about this, that we will lose a lot of our medical devices beginning from the year 2024. So this is a challenge. And very often we are talking about medical devices which already have been in the market for years and decades. And so in this concrete issue, I believe we should go for, first of all, extensions. We should give them more time to find a notified body to get their medical device approved. And the second thing is we need something which is called grandfathering. So if a product has been in the market, and you know, there's a post-market surveillance, we see if there was a problem with a medical device. And if it's already in the market for years, then we should simply accept that it is safe, and we shouldn't force them to go for a new approval, which is expensive, which takes a lot of time, which is a lot of bureaucracy. So I believe if we could include all those things, and I have many, many more, in the SME relief package, this would be a great opportunity.
Other questions? Yes?
Roman Máca, dobrý den also. And I have a question. You are regularly meeting representatives of SMEs and also associations. You mentioned this expo. And also you mentioned this problem with energy prices and the problematic accessibility of raw materials. I'm curious about the results of this debate with SMEs and associations and so on. Imagine that I am owner of a small SME. And I'm worried about my future, about my employees and so on. And what is the result of this debate? What SMEs should do from your perspectives to survive these crises or these conditions, or what not to do, because not only survive and maybe grow in these conditions. As I see, this Motor company is born big. Yeah? So if you have some tips for business owners, thank you.
Thank you. I will just start because this is more your field, but I will, what I want to say, what is really very precious, and we should be all proud of that the small and medium-sized companies, they survive because they are flexible and creative and innovative. So you would be surprised. We have, for now, very limited statistics. We don't have all the data yet, but after the pandemics, who really survived were the small and medium-sized enterprises because of their flexibility and creativity in every field. So what I personally expect that will happen even now, but what we know that they expect from us, they expect some effort at the European level, a common European effort. And for me this is nice because they trust European politicians even in the energy crisis. So this is what I heard all the 3 days. Please try to do common European effort in tackle high prices, in tackle all the crises we have, the affordability, the accessibility to energy, accessibility to the raw materials. So this is their expectation. So I'm happy that there is a trust, because you cannot say the same, let's say, from national politicians. This is expectation from SMEs.
Now, This is a perfect question, and it is very difficult to answer because there is this huge variety of small and medium-sized enterprises, and so there is no blueprint. You can't say you have to do this and then your company is safe. Of course, there is no blueprint. We have to look for individual solutions, and I believe that this is the advantage of SMEs. They are so flexible, they will find individual solutions. But like the first point I've mentioned before was the thing on resources, raw materials, and was the other thing, energy. I believe most companies, SMEs, it is very clear. I'm sorry, I can't really, draw pictures, but I will give my best. When it comes to energy, this is always this triangle. On one hand, we want to be CO2 neutral. Okay, but on the other hand, we have to have affordability. It has to be for a cheap price. But at the same time, we have to have reliability. We want to make sure that we can have electrical power in the amount we need anytime we need it. And so I suppose one of the most important things is for small and medium-sized companies to check whether they have this triangle. You can work on it. You can, like, for example, work on it when it comes to efficiency. You can work on it, for example, if you invest in renewables. There is so many solutions on this. I can't give you a black print on this, in general, but all I say is that this triangle of CO2 neutrality, reliability, and affordability, that you always have to watch that this triangle works. First thing. Second thing is, for a very, very long time, we didn't really pay attention on the diversification of our supply chains. We were used that we just have to pick up the phone or write an email and I get my raw materials. Everything was just in time. We didn't have any storage, for example. And everything we bought at the cheapest place. Everything. But on the other way around, this means that you are dependent on one supply chain. So we have to see that when it comes to supply chains, maybe it makes sense not only to rely on this one person or this one company or this one country, but you need an alternative. So the second point I would like to mention, besides the energy, is the diversification of supply chains. I believe this is strategic, and I believe SMEs already understood that it's strategic and that they shouldn't be dependent on only one company or one partner. This is a variety of a whole bunch of things, of course. This is not, now those 2 points I mentioned, it's not really valid and it's not really good for every single company, but as I said, there is no blueprint answer right now because the variety of SMEs is simply too big.
Some other questions? If not, yes? Yeah, I wasn't expecting 45 minutes debate, so SMEs should be super happy that we are discussing 45 minutes. Yes.
Yeah, thank you, and I'm sorry, but it's a little bit off-topic question, but I would like to use the opportunity that we have a representative of Czech Republic and Germany, and we know that 35% of Czech exports goes to Germany, and Czech Republic is sometimes nicknamed as a other German state in an economic way. Yeah. And I would like to ask you, how in this also conditions of crisis, how this cooperation is maybe in danger, and also we have a lot of Czech people works in Germany, maybe in Sachsen and Bayern, and also they work for local companies, for example, and how are German companies where Czech people are working, how they are resilient to this environment now, because, as I think you mentioned that to save SMEs is the best way to save jobs, and I'm not sure if maybe in these border regions, maybe Czech jobs will be in danger more than local people. I don't know, but Czechs will be maybe cheaper, so German jobs will be in danger. I don't know. So if you can comment this, and as I said, it's a little bit off topic question, but I'm curious about your answer.
I believe it's not off topic at all. This is a huge issue for every company living close to a border. And so I believe this is not off topic at all. And also to this question, there is not the simple solution. There is not the simple answer to this. But, you know, it was working very well for the last years and last decades. In Czech Republic, we see, not only in political terms, also in political terms, we see the Czech Republic as one of our closest allies in politics, but as well as economic, in an economic sense. And now we have even more challenges. And I believe now we have to be really smart. We shouldn't go back into protectionism, into member state thinking, in all this, because it simply does not work. What we have to do is we have to take those challenges which are there as an opportunity to even get into closer cooperation. And I want to give you an example. It was the beginning of the COVID crisis. You remember what happened? Everybody was like closing the borders, and it was horrible. Everybody was on this, every member state was kind of on this egoistic trip. Huh? For example, medical protective material, masks or other stuff, things for ventilating people, we were not supposed to export. Member states kept it for themselves. And it was horrible for me. As a European by heart, this was really horrible for me that everybody was on this ego trip. But the good thing is, the good side of the story is that it took about 2 weeks until the member states realized that this new challenge, we don't need less Europe, we need more Europe. And so from the European side, we implemented very fast again those so-called green lanes to make sure that we have the possibility to transport goods from one country into another country. And not only goods and material, also, for example, that member states took over patients from other member states to put them on the intensive care unit, because in some member states you had free capacity, in others you didn't. So at the end of the day, I would like to say, the higher the challenges are, the more challenges there are, the more we have to make sure that our cooperation is getting more and not less. It will make us stronger at the end of the day. And we need to be stronger. Every member state has to become stronger because, as I said before, there is no country in the European Union which is powerful or big enough, also Germany, including Germany. There is no member state in the European Union which is strong enough and capable enough to face all those challenges we have to face right now. And let's go for more cooperation there.
I add only one sentence. No, what sentence? 2 words. Single market. Functioning single market. If we want to do really a Christmas gift for SMEs, and if we should put only one thing inside the relief package, it would be functioning single market. That's the best what we can do for SMEs in Europe. And this is all about. Some other question, or maybe you will prefer individual questions later on? Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you very much for being with us in this press briefing. It was an honor to explain you what we experienced in these 3 days here in Prague. Just for your information, next SME Assembly, because it's always once a year, it will be during Spanish presidency and it will be in Bilbao, in Basque countries, next year. So, but we will be fighting every day for SMEs, and anything we can answer, we can still brief you about, or when there will be more clarity on SME relief package or anything else, we will be happy to brief you, to send you some informations, and anything you want to ask, we are still here available for a couple of minutes before Andreas takes the car and goes to Stuttgart. Thank you so much. Thank you, and have a nice afternoon.